Welcome. My name is Dr. Molly Denny, and I am going to close this door. My background is kind of a smorgasbord of things that led me to this place where I can visit with families. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you guys. I heard in other sessions y'all have already introduced yourselves. So we're not going to do that just for the sake of time. I met a few of you before, but I am going to make this interactive because I want to hear some things from you guys, and I want you to leave here today thinking about things that you maybe haven't thought of before. So as you see, I don't have a PowerPoint, not because I don't want to share my notes with you. I'm happy to do that if you want. I can jot your email down. But I really just want you to listen today, okay? So I've been a college professor. I've taken 1 million notes. I've typed 1 million syllabuses. But that's not really what this topic is. This is a topic of thinking about yourself. We're going to talk about your own family of origin and how that family that we all grew up in filters into the families that we then raise. And then also just having a child with special needs, how that changes the dynamics. So we're going to kind of jump around today, and I have some bullet points that I'm going to go through. So you'll see me referring some to my notes. So my family, just because I want y'all to get to know me too, I have 4 daughters, which is wild. I also grew up in a family with lots of girls, so I don't know any different. I would not know what to do with a boy if I had one. My oldest daughter is 15, and my youngest is 10, so my kids are like, literally like little stair steps. So I have lots of parenting challenges like the rest of you. All of my kids are typically developing. I have one daughter who's dyslexic, so that's kind of all new to me. So, we all have our things, even though I don't have a child with your children or grandchildren's diagnosis. I've worked with kids before that do, so, and really with families. So my education background, I went to Baylor. For my undergrad, I have an undergrad in communication sciences and disorders, which is basically speech pathology. So language was kind of something I think that I was really drawn to, just because children's language is pretty fascinating, and how it happens, and then when it doesn't happen, why, and how can we get to a place where they are able to communicate. As you all know, it's really important. But when I was a senior at Baylor, I was like, I feel like there's a lot more to kids' development. So it sort of made me interested in what other pieces are important for a child to develop, because there's lots of things that have to happen before language. There's lots of things leading up to the place of a child learning to talk or not learning to talk. So I decided to spread my wings a little bit. I moved to Dallas and started working at a place called the Rise School of Dallas, if any of y'all are from around here. It was pretty serendipitous, actually, because I was looking through like early childhood intervention jobs, and that popped up, and I went and interviewed, and they were like, "We love you. Can you come work here?" And I'm like, "Sure, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm willing to try." And that's really when I caught the bug, I guess you could say, for working with this population. So I was there for 10 years, so I moved from a classroom teacher. At Rise, if y'all don't know anything about it, they mix typical kids with special needs, and it's all early intervention. It is a beautiful program, and kids learn really naturally well from each other. And so my own children went to school there for preschool, and one thing I see in my kids is a very intense compassion that I don't think I could have taught them. I truly think they learned it from those early years of being in class with kids with special needs. And then the kids with special needs, are trying to keep up with the typical kids, and so it works out really well for everyone. So when I was there, the one thing that I loved more than anything was just talking with families like yours and getting to know their dynamics, their stories, their heartaches, just the fear of kind of what does the future hold. I mean, you guys know, like, each day brings its own set of challenges, but there's this long road ahead of like, what does this look like as adults, and what does this look like when I'm gone, and what does this look like for their siblings? And so that's one of the things we're going to talk a lot about today, And I just want you to think through, what is your family doing now to prepare for that, and have those hard conversations. Don't get so wrapped up in just like, we got to learn how to walk, although that's so important, because this is a lifelong thing. You know, that your kids aren't going to graduate and move out on their own and live happily ever after like your other kids might. These kids are going to have maybe longer, people looking after them for longer in their life, and that's a good thing, right? It's not a bad thing. So as long as you're thinking ahead. So we're going to talk about that. I have a master's in child development, and my whole research master's thesis was on siblings' perceptions of their family who have a child with special needs. So we're going to talk a lot about that. I interviewed siblings, like little kids 6 through 12, and asked how they felt about their mom and their dad and their brother or sister with special needs, and gathered all this really beautiful data that was all qualitative and kind of hard to narrow down because it was kids' perceptions, but it was really neat. So I'm going to share that with y'all too, just because I want you to kind of know whether they have siblings now or you're thinking about having them in the future, just kind of how kids see their families. I also have a PhD in family studies from Texas Women's University, and then I taught at the university for doctoral students for about 6 years, just because I felt like it was so important to share the experiences that I had with other students. And so I missed the classroom. So this is kind of like being in the class again. I was having fun preparing for it, just because I love to share the things that I know with others and learn from others too. So my current role, this is kind of neat. I helped develop a neighborhood in Waxahachie about 6 years ago for adults with special needs. It's called Daymark Living. There's a table out here. I didn't even know they were coming. I saw it earlier, and I was like, oh, we're here. So the founder has a son with Down syndrome, and he wanted his child to have the same opportunities in a different way than his typical kids did. And so he's like, I had this crazy idea to build a community for adults with special needs. Would you come and be one of the directors? And so I said yes. My kids were old enough at that point, they were in school, and so I was ready to jump back into the workforce. And I wasn't a very good stay-at-home mom, so I thought I should probably get back out there and work. So that's kind of what I do now. I work really closely with families on the transition of leaving home for the first time. If any of you have had kids leave for college, all those emotions and feelings that you felt are hard, and then times 1,000 when this child has turning into an adult that has some kind of IDD. And so there's a lot of emotions that go into that, and we're really transparent and open. So I kind of walk families through that process of like admitting into Daymark or not admitting into Daymark. We always want to give resources if we're not a fit for them. So you'll have to look us up on the website. It's pretty neat. They live in little cottages with cottage mates, and there's no one living in the houses with them, but we have staff there on campus that are giving them the support that they need. So I was there till 10:45 last night. It's pretty fun. I felt like a mom. I was like, everybody get in bed. We got to go. We got to get to bed early because mom's got to get up in the morning. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to make this a little interactive, so I want y'all to jump in. So raise your hand if you think parenting's hard work. Every single one of y'all raised your hand. I love it. When you're raising a child with special needs, the level of care and stress is not just higher than like the normal stress of it. It shifts the whole foundation of your family, right? Everyone in your whole family, it shifts it. And it adds complexities that you probably didn't know about before you were living in this new world. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful world, but there's a lot of unknowns, and that's okay, right? That's okay. And I think for those of you that are older, maybe this is a grandchild that you have been blessed with in your family, you know it's okay, right? Because with age comes a lot of wisdom for a lot of us, and so you kind of settle in. So those of you that are younger, find those people in your life. Y'all lean on each other. It's so wonderful to hear, hey, I met someone who has a 16-year-old, and these are the things that they're struggling with. Or we have Lee, who's 13 months, and, mom's like, what's next? And all of those things. So I love that these kind of conferences bring people together. So don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, it's so important, I think, for all of us. So I want you to close your eyes. Take a big, deep breath. And I want you to think about this for a minute. When you were told that your child or grandchild or niece or nephew was going to have some kind of IDD, do you feel what that felt like? Can you go back to that place? Yeah, it's right there. So, were you prepared for that grief? No, we weren't prepared. Did you recognize at that moment your personal stress levels? No. Did you think about how this would strengthen your family relationships and how important that would be to that child's care? Okay, open your eyes. Isn't it crazy how our minds can just go right back to those feelings? It's always kind of right there. It's always kind of right there. But then you think about the journey and the excitement that you feel of what's to come next. And also there's a lot of fear with that because there's lots of unknowns. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. So there's a book that I've read not too long ago by Dr. Shanker, and he talks about this body of research because I'm always really interested in what does research say. Just because we can measure some things and it helps us. He talked about emotional co-regulation and just that prefrontal cortex of a child's brain. And when it's not fully developed, which it's not because they're children, I have teenagers, they're still not developed, it co-regulates with our prefrontal cortex of our own brains. So what does that mean? That means as a mom, if I'm super stressed with adult stuff, that it filters into my kids, whether I try to hide it or I put a smile on, it still filters into them. So we're going to talk about self-care too. That has nothing to do with my topic, but I think it's so important, especially when your kids are really little and they're really needy and you're their everything and you're meeting every need for them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit too. I loved in his book, he says, when an adult is in a stress cycle, which we're all in a stress cycle, the connection of the child obviously makes that stress. And he talks about how our brains are really synced up with our kids, kind of like a Bluetooth. You don't even have to be saying it or talking about, I'm so stressed out, or I'm so tired, or I don't know what to do, or my marriage is falling apart, or my family's not speaking to me, or I hate my doctor, or, whatever it is. So those things just filter out. So it's really important to recognize that in our own selves. So we're going to break all this down, and we're going to hash it out. I think I said this earlier, but my main goal for you all to leave here today is just, I want you to learn one thing that you didn't know before you came in here, and I hope this conversation leaves you thinking about your own families in a good way. So we're going to talk about traits of a healthy family, and I want you to start kind of thinking about your family of origin, like where you came from, the family you grew up in, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that, and then your own family that you have now, your family that you're raising, or your family that, if you have adult children who now have a child with special needs. So think about those different families that you've had. So healthy families, here we go. Communication and listening. Okay, right, we know that. Everyone says you need to communicate and you need to listen, but when I'm really tired at the end of the day, I don't always really want to listen to my husband, right? I just don't. My head hurts, my brain hurts. Everyone's been talking to me all day. I work with a really high needs population. So sometimes I'm just not a great listener, but if I know that that's important, then sometimes I can kind of make myself do it, right? Mind over matter. Reading nonverbal cues of our family, of our kids, even kids with special needs, right? If they've had a hard day or they're agitated or they're tired or they're hungry. Looking for those nonverbal cues is important. Taking time to invest in each other. Are parents of kids with special needs good about going on dates with each other? Anyone? No. Are you good about going on a date with your spouse? What? Once a week. I love it. Once a week. There you go. That's your model right there. Make yourself do it. Make yourself do it. It's really, really important. Just taking that time. Don't say hurtful words to each other. Okay, right, we know that. Like, we're not in kindergarten. But when we're tired and stressed, it's really easy to say hurtful words. So healthy families don't usually say hurtful words. Encourage independent thinking with your kids' siblings. Let them have a voice. Let them say how they feel. If they're mad or they're angry, they get to say that, right? That's fair, and that's a safe place to do that. Take ownership when we do something wrong. Even as adults, I tell my kids all the time, I'm sorry, I really messed that up, but I've never done this before, and I need you to show me some grace. There's a lot of power in that, and I think kids are much more forgiving of us. We don't have to act like we had it all right. That's what our parents did. My generation's parents acted like, hey, we got this. We know what we're doing, and they didn't own any of that, so we were all confused, like, what are we supposed to do here? Say you're sorry when you're wrong, apologizing. Healthy families also affirm each other. So we want to like the people in our family, and we don't always like them, but we need to find things about them that we like. Value each other, find worth in each family member, show affection. Y'all's kids need lots of love anyway. Physical touch is so important, and just showing affection to each other, even if it's just walking by your spouse and stopping and putting your hands on their shoulders, or rub the top of their head, or reach down and give them a kiss on the cheek, or love on each other, even if it's your daughter or your brother. Just that's a really important for all of us, just that connection that we can have. You can say a lot to each other without saying anything. Just emotional support. We talked again about like parents having a good self-esteem and just being confident in who we are and that we don't have it all figured out. That can kind of filter out into our kids, whether they're typical or have special needs. And then just encourage each other instead of praising. Like we've learned like hey, you did a great job. Everyone gets a trophy, right? Like that's dumb. We need to stop. And so just encouraging each other. Like you tried really hard, and I tell my kids like you really tried hard, and you were really, really bad at that. And that's okay, right? Like we tried soccer, and we're not soccer players. But we gave it our best go, and we had a lot of tears, and we finished what we started, and that's okay. We're just not good at soccer, right? My kids aren't good at singing either. They think they are. And I just tell them, like, hey, I'm going to encourage you to do what you're good at, because we're not all good at everything. The parenting era of thinking that we have to tell kids they're good at everything, what is that? Like, no one's good at everything. So we don't need to do that. Let's encourage each other. See, she agrees with me, rather than praising. So also just teaching respect for others, naming our differences. This is really important, that when you have multiple kids in your family with siblings, that you point out, don't tell your kids that everyone in your family is the same, because they're not. Right? They're just not. And that's okay too. Like, we're not the same. I'm not the same as my sister, and she doesn't have some kind of thing that makes her look different than me, but we're still really different. So it's okay to point out those differences and just say, hey, Molly's really outgoing and bubbly, and Lori is really bullheaded and, strong-willed. And so celebrate those differences in your family and talk about them, because kids like that. They like to know what they're good at. And then your kid with special needs, you can say, he's really good at whatever he's really good at. That makes him different than y'all, but we're going to celebrate that rather than look at it as some kind of deficit, because it's not. Encourage, those siblings just to have independent decision making, and then that there's consequences for those decisions. Goodness sakes, are we not talking about this so much in politics right now? You make decisions, and there's consequences. We can all jump on one bandwagon or the other about that, but teach your kids that. Like, I'm going to let you make some decisions. You're going to let your kids with special needs fall down sometimes, right? You can't always pick them up when they fall. That's how they learn. That's how we all learn. So that's really important. Trust is a hard one. We all, I think, struggle with this, but the foundation between families is so important. If your foundation is built on, a firm rock, then these kinds of things don't rock you quite as much. And if they do, you can get back to that place of that firm foundation, whatever that is, whether it's your faith, whether it's your family, whether it's your education, whatever it is, that firm foundation is really, really important. Allow trust to be mended when it's broken. Have fun. Play. Pay attention in your families for the need for play. Grandparents are really good at this, naturally, right? They know how important play is. Parents are like, we got to eat dinner, and we got to take a bath, and we got to wash your tennis shoes because you stepped in the mud, and then I've got to start the dishwasher, and then it's evening, and then nobody's really played, and so just get on the floor with your kids. Make time for that every day, and just let the other stuff, someone else can help you, or you can do it later. Just know how important play is. Be silly with your kids. Let them see you joke around. Enjoy that time. Slow down. We hear that all the time, but we live in a really fast world. I was thinking yesterday, I worked a long day, and when I got home, I thought, I'm not physically that tired, but I have had so much stimulation coming at me all day, and I'm wound pretty tight anyway, but I felt like someone was sitting on me because there was so much stimuli all day, and it was just life. It was there were no crises, there was no bad news, just the lights and the sounds and the cars and the radio and the cell phone. There's so many things that we're constantly bombarded with. So it's really important to slow down. Family dinners, in general, people who have a kid with special needs are not historically great at this, because a lot of times your kid with special needs is eating something different, or they're on a different schedule, or you need to feed them first so you can get them situated so you can do this with everyone else. Please do it together. Even if that means that your other kids are helping, they should be helping anyway, but include everyone in that. And it doesn't have to be, it can be mac and cheese out of the Kraft box. It doesn't matter. It's just the time that you spend together, and it's not going to happen every day. But there's a lot of research that shows how much kids learn from that family time at the dinner table. Eating is very social for us, and it always has been, if you think back even to our ancestors. So that's a really important time of the day, and if you can make it happen twice a week, then pat yourself on the back. But those values and family time are so important. And if everyone's isn't there in my family, we just do it anyway, right? If 3 out of 4 kids are there, I'm going to call that a success. And we're going to think okay, well, at least these 3 heard something good tonight. It doesn't have to be you're waiting for everyone to be there. Sometimes my husband doesn't make it. That's okay. We'll have it without him. They had dinner without me last night. Let's see. Oh, I love this. Just shared responsibility. This is really important with siblings too. Teaching your kids that having responsibilities at home is not about what you're doing. It's the attitude that you have when you're doing it. I don't really like to unload the dishwasher either, but it's the attitude that you have doing it. And teenagers are pretty bad at this, just in general. So I just say, fake it. Just act like you like what you're doing, and then eventually you'll make me think that you like what you're doing. It's the attitude and the effort. Respecting privacy. This is a big thing too. I hear this a lot with adults or families who have adults with special needs, where they've locked out the kid with special needs from the other kids' rooms, or the child with special needs gets into the other children's stuff. And I'm like, that's a tough one. And I don't really have a stance on it. Y'all may have a better thought. And we have a girl at Daymark that just started, and she was adopted. She had a lot of trauma, and she has autism. So she's pretty complex, but her family of origin, they don't truly know all the things that happened to her. And she has a lot of hoarding tendencies and just these interesting things that I don't think have anything to do with autism. I think it all goes back to her family of origin. And we were talking recently about how her parents, now that she lives at Daymark, they've taken locks off of everything. And I said, why did y'all have everything locked up? And she's like a squirrel. Like, she goes and gets everyone's things and brings them to her bed. So she makes this nest, they call it. And, well, I mean, we know that's like a reactive attachment thing. She's trying to make a safe place for herself, even though she's in a safe environment. So we talk a lot about that, too. You know, your other kids need to have their own things that they can have that they call their own, and kind of that privacy. It's important for all of us, but not to have the other child feel like they're locked out of something that might mean something to someone else. Healthy families value service. So we talked about this a while ago, but just having boundaries, like we don't have to do all the things. You know, you guys have a lot on your plate. I'm big on service. I mean, I love to serve others and our family to do that. We served in the special needs ministry for a couple of years, and one morning on Sunday I woke up and I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we I mean, I work with special needs people 6 days a week. That's my calling and my passion. But maybe just going to church is okay. Maybe just showing up and being poured into is better than trying to serve these other parents because I feel like I need to help them. Like, I was not having good boundaries for myself. And so you need to help each other and be a good resource, but know those limits. If you feel really, really stretched and you need to just hone in on what's happening at home, do it. I'm giving you permission. Let's see. Take time. I think I talked about how important the table time is. And then just seek help. If you need help in an area, don't be afraid to ask for it. I think we're getting better at that as a society. I think we realize the importance. I mean, mental health, y'all know, is a big buzzword right now. But there's more to these situations than just mental health. You know, it's okay to say, like, I really don't feel like I have time to clean my house anymore, and so get someone that can help you with that. Take the little tasks that add up to be really hard, and if you can get help in that area, go for it. Okay, so this is going to be fun. We're going to talk about your family of origin. Does everyone have something to write with? Okay, all right. So I want you to think about the family that you grew up in, your mom, your dad, whoever raised you. Does anyone have a crazy family? Me too. I'm with you. Yeah. I could do a whole seminar on my family. They're great. We're crazy fun, I say. So there's a couple of types of families, and I want you to write them down. There's 4, and then after we go through all 4, I want you to write or circle the one that you grew up in. So the first type is authoritarian. This is how my grandparents were. Very strict, high expectations, little responsiveness to what kids feel. They're like, yeah, I just need you to do what I ask you to do. You know, and if you don't, there's a consequence. It was real cut and dry, right? They're focused on obedience, discipline, control of what we're doing rather than nurturing. Like, how do you feel? My grandparents never one time asked me how I felt about something. It really did not matter to them. And that's okay. So that's the first one. The second one is competitive. This type of parenting is when we involve our kids, like academics, sports, social activities, to a really high competitive level. I have friends who are like this with their kids, and I'm always really feeling less than. I'm like, well, maybe I should be putting my kids in these special things and these, because the world we live in is so competitive anyway. So just pushing them to perform in all these areas of lives. I read that Tiger Mom book one time when I think my oldest was 2. And I remember getting done with it, and I'm like, yeah, that's just not going to work for me. I can't be that kind of mom. I respect her for that, and her kids are highly successful. But that's just not going to work for my parenting style. And I didn't even know what it was at the time. And sometimes people who have kids with special needs feel this pressure, like they somehow need to make my kid the smartest kid with agenesis, or I need to make my kid, their siblings need to be extra whatever because this child, is going to have these hard issues as they get older. So that's the competitive one. There's the uninvolved parents. Does anyone know anyone like this? It's just my kids can do whatever they want. I mean, they're going to make mistakes, free-range kids, all that. It's if anyone lives in Austin, my friends in Austin, I'm like, what? Is this like a different world? What are you talking about? Like their kids don't wear shoes places, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my grandmother would die. They're just kind of like, not responsive. It's kind of like indifferent or dismissive. It can even be neglectful, right? Like just they let them grow up, and whatever you're going to be, you're going to be. So very opposite of the competitive one. And then the last one is codependent. We hear codependency and we think this is unhealthy, just because there's been a lot of research and a lot of talk about codependency. But it basically just means that the parents and the children have an unhealthy attachment. And I see so much of this at Daymark. So much. Sorry, dads, but this is kind of directed towards moms. My moms at Daymark, a lot of them, for the last 20 or 30 years, this has been their whole life. This is all they know. It's not a bad thing. That's what they're supposed to do, right? But their adults now are transitioning into adulthood, and mom is like, not only have I lost myself along the way, I don't know how to let go. I'm holding on so tight. I have controlled everything this now adult has eaten, worn, picked out for themselves. Every single thing that they've done, I've had my thumb on them because you had to. So listen to me. The teenage years for y'all's kiddos are very similar to the teenage years of typical kids. It looks different, but you have to start letting go. Whatever their adulthood's going to look like, and we don't know yet, but whatever it's going to be, start telling yourself in your mind, there will be a transition at that point where I have to let go. I have to let go that I can't take care of him anymore. I have to let go that my other kids may inherit the situation. I have to let go that there might be a place like Daymark that might not do it as good as I think I do it, but that it might be different, and that's okay. So start thinking about that too. Who has a teenager in here with ACC? Okay. It's hard, huh? It's tough. But it's really important. So did y'all circle the one that you grew up in? All right, raise your hand if you grew up in a codependent family. Okay. 2. I saw 2 hands. Raise your hand if you grew up in an uninvolved family. 4, 5. Raise your hand if you grew up in a competitive family. I mean, my parents literally were like, okay, so where are you going to med school or grad school, or like you can be a lawyer, you can have your PhD. I mean, and I thought that was normal. And all of my sisters and myself, I mean, if you look at what we do, you would think like, yeah, they're pretty successful in their fields. And I'm like, that was so stressful as the kid, but I didn't know any different. I just thought that's what we did. And then who is authoritarian? So not to like point out age, but those of you in here that are older mostly raised your hand for authoritarian. And that's pretty typical for as generations have changed. So I don't know what they're going to call us. I mean, who knows? We'll get lumped in with the free-range parents or something. Okay, so there's different roles in a family. So I want you to write these down too, and then think about your siblings and yourself if you have siblings. And so the first person in a family is the hero. So this person is like the good kid, the responsible child, right? They're the hero. Sometimes it's the oldest, not always. If the oldest is really messed up, then it might be someone down the line. But, sometimes it's the oldest. They're usually good leaders. They like to organize everyone. This is my oldest daughter. She's like, you need to get your lunch, and and I'm like, no, nobody told you to do that. It comes kind of natural. So this is the hero. They have a hard time relaxing. They have a hard time playing. They don't really like to follow others. They want to be the chief. And they really don't like others to be right. They want to be right. That's okay, right? There's got to be a hero in every family. So write down your sibling's name in that if you had a hero. The next one is the rescuer. So they take care of everybody's needs and emotions. They're going to solve the problems. They probably have difficulty with conflict. They want to help everyone. Kind of hard to meet their own needs. They put themselves last, but they kind of take pride in that, like, I don't take care of myself because I take care of everyone else. They live sometimes with guilt, and they find it kind of challenging to focus on themselves. So write down in your family who the rescuer was. The mediator. This one is kind of like the rescuer, but they try to keep peace in this family system. So they do a lot of emotional work, like, oh, well, my sisters are really mad at each other, so I'm going to try to talk to both of them and try to make sure that everybody's okay, or, kind of try to mediate, like, Mom didn't really mean it that way. She really was trying to help you. Those kinds of conversations. That's the mediator. The scapegoat or the black sheep. Anyone have one of those in your family? They're so funny. It's really kind of funny. Like, the things they do, everyone's like, oh, gosh, there we go again. They get that reaction a lot. This person is, like, always kind of has issues, whatever those issues might be. It may not be, like, a serious issue, but it could be a really serious issue. But these people usually affect the whole family in some way. Sometimes they have a great sense of humor. Usually they're brutally honest, maybe to a fault where it's a little too much. And sometimes they don't express their emotions and their feelings appropriately, and that can be kind of hurtful. The switchboard, this one was new to me. So this one is like the central information center to the family. Do y'all have one of those? That's like, okay, it's Easter, so I need you to bring this and you to bring that, and we're going to have, dinner at this time, and they're like the organizer. They're the switchboard. And they'll tell you, like, yeah, so-and-so had soccer last night, and then tomorrow we're doing this. So they're the information person. And they kind of like everyone goes to them for organizing. The power broker. So this one works at maintaining a hierarchy in the family, and they like to put themselves up at the top. They might not be the oldest, or they might not be the smartest, or the prettiest, or the tallest, or whatever, but they really feel like controlling their environment gives them that power. And then the lost child. This child's obedient, passive, hidden in the family trauma, if there is any, stays kind of hidden to avoid the problem. They're pretty flexible and easygoing. This used to be called Pollyanna. Y'all probably heard that. Like, she's the Pollyanna of the family. They're kind of sometimes scared to make decisions, and they'll just follow without questioning. All right, the next one's the clown. Does anyone have a clown in their family? Nobody? Someone in the back did. You do? Okay. Are you the clown? Yeah. Love it. See if this describes you. They use humor to offset the family conflict and create a sense that things are okay. They're usually really talented, but not always great at saying how they feel. Is that true? Yeah. He said yes. The cheerleader. The cheerleader's like always there to support. Y'all need cheerleaders in your life, whether it's your siblings or your cousins or your best friend. You guys need cheerleaders. Those are important. Someone who's just always encouraging. They do a really good job at like giving out positive feelings towards others and then being able to take care of themselves too. So there's usually a cheerleader in every family. A nurturer. So this person provides emotional support. They're good at mediating. They focus on like meeting emotional needs. This is like your friend or your sibling that's like, no, how are you? Like just how are you doing, right? You need that person in your life too. A thinker. Do any of y'all have like a friend or a sibling that when you told them about your child or grandchild's diagnosis that was like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to do this, and you need this therapy, and you need to call this OT, and you need to call this PT, and you need to get on the waiting list at Children's, and you need to, all this. They're like going to help you think through all of this and do what you need to do. Are any of y'all that person? Were you that way before? Have you always been that way? Yeah. Like rational thinkers. Like here's the steps to what we do. Sometimes those of us that are thinkers have a little trouble like emotionally connecting with people because we go into like, let's figure out the problem mode rather than just saying like, how are you? This is tough. The truth teller. So this person kind of just reflects it as it is. I call these the realists. So Sometimes other family members avoid these people because they don't really want to hear the truth about what's going on, especially if you grew up in a dysfunctional family. There's usually someone who's just a realist and is like, yeah, my family was really screwed up. And the other people in the family kind of prefer that you don't say that, especially your parents. They're like, why are you exposing me like that? Okay, so I'm going to go back and ask this. So how many in your family of origin have a hero, had a hero? Okay. How many of you were the hero? Okay. All right, how many of you had someone who's a rescuer? How many of you were the rescuer? Okay. How many of you are the mediator? Are any of you middle children? No? Sometimes the middle ones do this. How many of you have a black sheep in your family? How many of you are the black sheep? Nobody? I found one. She's one. How many of you had a switchboard or have one that's like trying to like keep everyone in the loop, knowing what's going on? Yeah. Are you the switchboard? He's not. Are you? No. How many of you have the power broker? This one's like the person that's like, I run the family. Are you the power broker? No. No. I mean, he's not going to admit it, right? Like, that would be embarrassing. It's not a bad thing. None of these are bad things. Any of you have a sibling that was the lost child? Were you the lost child? You were? Yeah. Were you the baby? Yeah. I'm the baby, too. I get it. Well, we know who the clown is. He's there. He's here with us. Any of you have a sibling that was a clown? They make it pretty fun. I mean, really. Like, you know when they get there that it's going to be a fun time. That's how my sister is. She walks in the room, and me and my oldest sister say she sucks the life out of the room because it's like she comes in, and everyone's like, whew, like we just have to kind of brace ourselves, and she will dominate my parents. We're adults. I mean, we're grown-ups. She will dominate their attention for the first, 45 minutes, and then she relaxes. So we just let her do it now. We're like, we'll talk to y'all later. So it's like this funny dynamic. We're like, oh, here she comes. But we love her, and she's the clown, too. So it's like a really interesting dynamic. And she's the middle child and strong-willed. She's, got a weird combo. I don't know. But we love her. Anyone have a cheerleader sibling? None. Oh, she's the cheerleader. He's like. Anyone have a nurturer? Or are you a nurturer? None. Interesting. Anyone have a thinker? Don't you kind of love the thinkers? Like they help. They help us. They're good to have in our life. Anyone have a truth teller? Like I just totally exposed my family. Are you the truth teller? No. He is. See, we're on the same page. All right. That's kind of fun, huh? Now you get to call your siblings on the way home and be like, you're the scapegoat. So let's talk a little bit about what affects family dynamics. I'm going to run through these because I don't want to run out of time, and I always have too much information, and then you're going to leave, and I'm going to feel like I didn't share it all. So I'm going to try to zip through. Family values. Again, you've been thinking about your family of origin. So those values that you learned growing up, they come with us, right? We can't shake them all off. Culture, ethnicity, beliefs about gender, special needs. Did any of you have a child with special needs in your family until you now have a child with special needs in your family? You did. Okay. Did someone else raise their hand? You did. Okay. Was it a sibling? Cousin. What about you? Sibling. Okay. Yeah. It's always really interesting, dynamics, because our families at Daymark that have had another child or someone in their family with special needs, and now they're kind of more relaxed about it. They're like, hey, we've sort of done this before. This looks a little different, but it's not quite as scary. So that can be an interesting thing. Just your nature of attachment. So do you have healthy attachments, unhealthy attachments? Those things can affect family dynamics. Dynamics of previous generations. Both of my grandparents on my mom's side were raging alcoholics. So we have all that comes with that, right? So my mom dealt with that. And then all of her trauma that she dealt with then came over to me, and then, it passes down, and kind of those generational heartaches and things, they go with us, whether we want them or not. Did anyone grow up in a perfect family? I didn't think so. Social environments, economic environments, political beliefs. We're going to talk a little bit about the grief cycle. I'm just going to touch on this because I feel like you guys probably know a lot about this, but it's really important for you to know in what I do that I see families going through this again. You go through it when you find out about a diagnosis. You go through it when your kids start school. You go through it when your kids graduate from high school. You go through it when they transition to adulthood. And then there's a new one. You go through it again when they have sexuality things, which happens all the time to everybody. It's very normal. The parent's like, oh, geez, I did not think about this. Like, this was not something that I really was prepared for. But yet, here we are. I see vagina and penis like 100 times a day with what I do. And so it just becomes part of our talks. And it's so funny because sometimes I say it and the parents are like, whoa, we didn't really use those words. And I'm like, well, shame on you. You should. You need to be open. Listen, they have the same feelings, desires, and body parts that we all have. And so we're going to need to deal with this. We can't just say this is off limits to you, or you're never going to do that, or you're never going to love someone, or you're never going to have someone like you, or you're never going to have someone touch you, or someone's going to abuse you, or whatever, all the whatevers, right? It's a thing. It's a thing. Those of you with teenagers, is it a thing? Yeah. And please, 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 don't call it like your special time or like your time with your teddy bear or like, please. Just don't, if you have boys and they go in their room and you know what they're doing, please don't name it something that you would name to a 5-year-old. Because y'all don't understand. Like, we have parents that are like, yeah, my daughter, she'll go in a room and close her door and we just, blind eye, like we didn't want to know. And I'm like, well, that's not helping her. Like, she doesn't know. And if you don't know, then we're telling her, or she moves to this community and there's like cute boys everywhere. And so now what do we do with that? Those feelings and these emotions and all of this, it's just a very real thing. So be thinking about that. It's important. So the grief cycle, denial. Did any of you go into denial when you got a diagnosis? Did any of you not know that your child had ACC when you were pregnant? You didn't know? Oh, a lot of y'all. Okay. And then how many of you did know? Okay. Yes, y'all are like half and half. That's a real different grief cycle. It's real different. Because when you know in utero, you have time to go through these emotions. But those feelings and hormones and fears can also affect that baby inside. And then you have fears and worries and anxiety about what your fear and worry and anxiety is doing to your baby inside of you. It's like just a real ugly cycle. And then those of you that were surprised and found out when they were born, wait, what? Like, we were coming to the hospital to have a baby, and now we're going home, and my whole world just changed, right? So those are kind of different ways to grieve. It's all grief, but it can be kind of different. So that's definitely the worst part of it. I can tell y'all that. The worst part's over, right? It's not real easy what's coming ahead, but that's the worst part. Anger, that's the second part. So when they start, feeling alienated, like they're little and they're cute and they're cuddly and everyone thinks they're darling and everyone loves a baby. Of course. But then they start to notice they're different, or someone at school says something, or a parent or another child looks at them or asks, like, why doesn't he walk? Or we're on the playground, and, those things happen, right? They happen. They happen to all of y'all. So sometimes that anger can kind of resurface itself. Like, why do we have to deal with this? Like, my mom has cancer, and now I have this kid. We go through these feelings of anger. There's lots of stresses on marriage during this. Once the anger kind of passes, it's pretty neat to watch families go through this, because when families stick together, they have a really strong bond. We have a lot of parents at Daymark that are divorced, a lot. I don't need to tell y'all the statistics, But those that have stuck it out, like you young people, young married people, I don't know that I know any marriages as strong as those. And it's a different kind of strong. It's really beautiful. I mean, I tell some of my families, I'm like, you guys work together so well. Do you see how well you work together? And it doesn't mean they're like, we're perfect and we got it all figured out. They're like, yeah, no, I didn't like talk to him for a month because we disagreed on therapy types or whatever. But they work through it. So that's really important. Those marriages are really beautiful as we're transitioning to adulthood. Bargaining, I never really understood this, but I think this is kind of like you pray and say, God, if you'll make this baby be born and it doesn't have this, then, won't blame the world or I'll, whatever. I'll do whatever you need me to do, that bargaining stage. And then depression, that's pretty normal. I mean, I have a lot of families. We work with a lot of families who have kids with Down syndrome. And so, again, kind of like y'all, it's like half no in utero, half find out at the hospital. And then we work with a lot of parents who have kids with autism, and their stories are real scattered. It's like mom's usually like, yeah, I knew. I hear that all the time. Yeah, I knew early on. But they'll find out at different stages. We have all these girls that are diagnosed at like 15 and 16 now. So we have a lot of hardship leading up to that. And then, because they're verbal and they're social but they're quirky and they struggle understanding things. And so then teenage years are suddenly diagnosed with autism. The parents are like, what? It makes a lot of sense. They love that feeling. But then also, we weren't really expecting this. And so that can be really interesting too. And then there's just acceptance when you start to kind of dream again and buckle down and do the hard work. And also just like knowing it's going to be hard, but then seeing the beauty in it. You guys are lucky, right? Easy for me to say. I don't have a kid with special needs, but I work with these families. But y'all are lucky. Your life would be so different. This is a hard gift, I call it. At Daymark, we call it beautifully complex. So if you can sometimes accept it and just look at this child as they are and then their abilities, and they're going to do more than you imagined, which is kind of fun. It may not look like what you think, and there's always things that end up being hard that we don't anticipate, and things that we think, oh gosh, the teenage years are going to be terrible, and it's going to be so hard, and then the teenage years are great, and they're easy, and they're fun, but then suddenly adulthood is hard. And so you don't really know, and that's kind of fun. It's the unknown if you're up for the adventure, which you don't really have a choice because here you are. It's not unusual to run through these stages more than once, but it's really important just to know, like, hey, I'm feeling kind of depressed about this again, or you feel that wave of grief come over you again, probably like y'all did whenever I asked you to go back to that moment. It's just right there, and that's okay. Like, we're human, and we have to be able to touch on that. All right, let's talk about siblings. I got to see what time it is. Hang on. Where's my phone? It's noon. Okay. Oh, no, I got to talk fast. All right. So I'll tell y'all this pretty quick, but I did my master's thesis, like I told y'all, on siblings' perceptions of their families, and they all had siblings within like 10 years of their age, which was really neat. And I asked them all these questions about their family and their parents and their siblings and their values and traditions and all these things. And it was this really in-depth study, and we gathered all this great data. And I asked these questions that, they had all these things to say, and they're delightful and smart and really, really, really perceptive. Really perceptive. I would venture to say more perceptive than kids who don't have a sibling with special needs. And here's what I found. They don't know any different. It's fantastic because they don't know what it would be like if they didn't have a sibling with special needs. And this is their norm. That's all they know. So unless they have a sibling born 20 years after them, which is pretty rare, this is all they know. And so they think it's fine. This is my family. This is my brother. This is my sister. I love them. It was really neat. I was like, well, I couldn't have made that up. I thought it was going to be totally different, which is the fun part about research. So here's the things to focus on. Communication, we talked about that. Acknowledging when things are hard. Engage outside help. Get a babysitter. Do online grocery shopping. Get a housekeeper if you can. Help your friend clean her house, and she can help you clean. Y'all just help each other, relieve any stress that you can. And then let's talk a little bit about parental self-care. And I'm not talking about like normal self-care. I'm not talking about like going to get your nails done or getting your hair highlighted or whatever, getting your eyebrows done. I'm talking about like deep, radical self-compassion practices. So families who have kids with special needs are very concerned about the deficits. And then suddenly we're not looking at like the emotional crisis that could be happening inside. And then it's like 20 years later and you're like, gosh, I just didn't even realize like that I didn't think about myself. And the whole family. So I want you to write down 3 things on your paper that you do for yourself each day. Just for yourself. Okay, someone holler one out. Exercise, okay. How long do you exercise? 30 minutes, I love it. Someone else. Go for a walk? How long do you walk? Nice. It's a good time to think, right? Do you take your phone? Good. Who else? Breathe? Read. How long do you read? Do you do it before bed? First thing in the morning. Anyone else? Yes. Pray. How long do you spend in prayer? Half hour. Anyone else? Hey, I'm about to tell them when they're not retired they need to make time. Who else? Garden. How long do you spend in your garden? Yeah. I'll tell y'all mine. So I told you we have 4 kids, so it's complete chaos at my house. And there's a lot of girls and a lot of drama and a lot of talking. A lot of talking. And then I'm working with people with special needs all day, and so there's also a lot of talking, and a lot of everything. And so I'm a people person, and I love people, but I've learned as I've gotten older how important this is so that I can be my best Molly when I go to give to others. And you guys are giving, you don't have that getaway, right? Like these little people are with you. They're with you. So it's really important to think of how can you carve out. So in the morning, I get up early with my husband, and we just drink a cup of coffee. There is no agenda. We just sit together. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we don't. It's the best way to start my day because we can connect before whatever's going to happen, right? And it can be like 20 minutes. I mean, all of y'all said like 20, 30 minutes, just that extra time. I also take 10 minutes of quiet when I get home just to transition, right? So I've kind of trained my kids. I have a friend, y'all, who has 5 kids, and she trained her kids from the age of like 2 that she was going to go in her room after lunch each day, and they were not to knock on the door. My kids were like sticking their fingers under the door or like, Mom, or like touching me or, all of a sudden, like, everyone's pulling each other's hair, and I'm like, how does she train them? Now, that is impressive. I tried it. It didn't go very well. So I just take those 10 minutes of quiet. And then, does anyone like to take warm baths? That's really good. If you don't, you should try. Because you can't, like, get out and, like, you can't get your phone because you might drop your phone in the tub, so you don't have your phone, and then I do it right before bed when everyone's asleep, and it's just like kind of wash the day off. So the ultimate goal here is not perfection. We're just going to do the best with what we've been given. And I read some articles when I was getting ready for this, and the Gottman Institute asks families to think about how their lives would be if they took 10% of the love and energy they donated to their children who have special needs and gave it back to themselves. 10%, that's not very much, right? So, like, if he's going to work out, then, then you're watching the kids during that time. Then you figure out, like, hey, if you're going to do this for 30 minutes, then I'd like to do this. And just make it part of your routine. Tell your spouse, like, I got this. Things seem pretty calm. This is your time. Go take a walk or take a drive. Go to Starbucks. Get a coffee. Call a friend. Sometimes just talking to a friend away from the house can be so life-giving. I have my very best friend in the whole world is my age, and she's dying of metastatic stage 4 breast cancer. I had coffee with her this morning. She looks great. You would never know if you saw her. But we talk a lot about, like, let's just not talk about cancer, right? You'll need those people in your life too. Like, you can just say, like, I don't want to talk about special needs today. I just want to talk about whatever. Remember that time in college when we, I remember in high school when we stole our dad's car and, like, drove through to see the cute boys at the Sonic. Like, just talk about things like that have nothing to do with special needs, because that's really important to you. The other part of this that I thought was really neat was a lot of parents just said that they would feel selfish, that there's no time. It says, obviously it's natural if you have a child with special needs to be focused on the kids, and you have to be, but you have to know that, like, caring for yourself and taking care of your needs helps that downhill flow of anxiety that's going on to your already compromised kids. So if you can do something for yourself, that helps everyone in the whole family. And then when we think about how connected we are with stress, we think a little more about, like, hey, I'd like to go to a yoga class or go swimming or take a walk alone like you do. And that's important. And this might be the best thing you can do for your kids, is do something for yourself. So I want to talk last about what I see at Daymark with siblings and parents. And this is the fun part of what I do. So we call it a long lead-in time. So we get to know our families really well. So, like, families call in, say, I have a 20-year-old, fairly functioning with ADLs but nonverbal, or I have a child with, a chromosome malformation, and they're just really rare genetic disorder, and there's only 100 people in the world that have it, and we don't really know what their life's going to look like, but they function pretty well. They just need some support, and they're really tired of me telling them what to do. So we build these long relationships with these families. And then at some point, they'll come see Daymark, and we'll tour them, and they see all these adults that are, in community, and they're having fun, and they're stimulated, and they're working out and about, and they're, being productive. And they have meaning in their life, and it's not all coming from home. And then these parents start this sort of letting go process, right? Like, this could be something that this could be for my child. And for y'all, whether it's something like Daymark or it's something that one of you guys are going to open someday for kids like yours, then it's an emotional process, and the parents go through it in a really different way than siblings. So I have this pretty big group of parents who I would say are in their 80s now, 70s, 80s. So their kids are in their 30s, 40s, and they have lived at home all this time, right? So society said, hey, everyone that has a special need needs to go to an institution or a state school. And we figured out that was, right, subpar, bad funding, no one was thriving. Bad. So then society said, okay, those are bad. Institutions are bad, right? Everyone thought they were bad. The people that worked there thought they were bad. The people that lived there thought they were bad. The people funding it thought it was bad. It was bad. So they're like, okay, that's not going to work. So let's just give people money and send everyone back home. I'm kind of thinking that wasn't really good either, but now I think we're finally to a place where we've kind of found a middle ground, right? Because when you're mom and dad and you're 70, are you an 80? Are you like going out a lot and seeing a lot of people and engaged, really super engaged, or are you working still and then there's no one home? It's not great, right? And I at 45 can provide a lot more stimulation for my kids now than I'm going to be able to in 40 years, and that's okay. I know that, and that's normal. But you also have to think: is it better to transition to adulthood like we all did in your late teen years or early 20s? Is that better? Or is it better to wait until they're 40 and 50 and now suddenly mom or dad has died tragically or unexpectedly? That is by far the most challenging situation, I will tell y'all. And oddly enough, at Daymark, we have a lot of residents who are in their 40s and 50s, whose parents died like within months of each other. And you don't really think that's going to happen, right? You think like, well, we're taking care of this child and they're super engaged in the community and they're working and then they're coming home and then they're getting therapy in the afternoon and we're providing all these things even though they're 20 and they really miss their friends and all their friends from high school have moved on. And so this is tough because we think we're doing the best we can and things seem like they're going well, but then 40 years goes by and they don't have any friends. I mean, I ask my residents at the application, like, tell me about some of your friends. That's just one of the questions I ask. And they might have one, or it'll be their parents' friends, or like their mom's Bible study friends that they see on Wednesdays. And it makes me sad because I see our residents at Daymark and they really have friends. Their friendship looks real different than ours, but they really have that social learning environment. And that's a whole different transition than some residents that we've had who like came out of high school and they're super immature at 19. I mean, every 19-year-old's super immature, right? But I mean, I have some boys with autism that are 19 and I'm like, are you 5? I mean, you're 6'5" and like you're gonna take me out just opening the door for me. They just have all this energy. They're like puppies and they can't control their body and they have all these emotions and big feelings and all these things, but they're happy. And so that makes parents feel good, because it's not them looking at mom and dad all the time saying like, are you going to take me today to the mall or like Starbucks, or can we go see your friends, or can you drop me off at Whataburger? And those kind of things can be kind of hard. So whatever that future looks like, plan for it. Please save money, right? If you're saving money for your typical kids for college, there's a stopping point for that. Like I have to save a lot of money every month for my kids. I have 4 kids that are going to go to college within 5 years. So more than half my salary every month I save for them. But I know that's going to stop, right? At some point, they're going to finish. That's not going to be like that, right? So you have to plan with a really long lead time. And it may not be more or less money, but you just have to think ahead. So if you don't have a special needs planner, please go get one. Ask each other, even Lee's mom, who's 13 months old. Start those conversations because their siblings, it's not just the daily care. We don't really know what the cost is going to be. And a lot of times grandparents will help. Right, grandparents or help, or siblings will help. I have one family who both of the siblings pay $500 a month, and then mom and dad pick up the other cost. It's really cool. But insurance, up to this point, doesn't pay for places like that. They should, but they don't. So save money. It's hard to save when you're shelling out a lot of money for therapy, but just try to make it a priority, because if that's not a stressor at the point of transitioning, it's just one less thing you have to really, really worry about. And if you have someone that helps you and it just like comes out every month and you don't have to think about it, that's the best. Even if it's $50 a month. Plan ahead. One more thing I want to talk about, and then I'll let y'all go. Are y'all eating lunch? This seems like we're in lunchtime. After this? Okay. I'm like, wait, y'all should be eating or something. With your siblings, talk about this with them. Talk about when we're gone. Like, what does this look like? Are you comfortable? I have siblings who are like, I told my mom and dad, I love this sibling. My brother is wonderful. He's precious. He was my best friend, but I have my own family, and I have my own job and my own things. And it's not that I don't love them, because I do, but they can't live with me. I'm never home, or I have my own stuff going on. Or sometimes they have their own child with special needs, because you don't know about that either. And so it's really important to have those conversations with your siblings who are teenagers as they're kind of transitioning also into adulthood. And sometimes someone's like, I didn't think I really wanted to help as much as I do now that we're all older. Don't tax one kid with it unless that's the only one you have. If you have several, let's share the responsibility, right? Like, who wants to make sure that the money's used well, and who wants to make sure they've got SSI all lined up all the time, and who wants to make sure that they're getting the care that they need. Divvy it up, but think about it. Just think about that, and don't think of it as like, oh, I hear this all the time from families. Well, I don't want to burden their siblings with this. I'm like, this is not a burden. This is a blessing. So we have to reframe it. But as parents and grandparents, it's our responsibility to pave the way for those siblings, so that when that happens, and it's going to happen, that you have a plan. Anyone have a special needs planner already? You do? I know some too, if you need some references. It's expensive. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's expensive, but it's worth it. I mean, we're planning for our retirement, and we're planning for our kids to go to college, and we're planning things. So let's plan for this too, because it doesn't have a stop point. I'm going to give y'all my email. It's Molly, Molly, and then a period. And then my last name is Denny, Denny. So Molly, period, Denny, at, bless you, daymarkliving.com. And you can just call Daymark too and say, we heard Molly and we want to pick her brain. I'm happy to answer any questions for y'all. It doesn't have to have anything to do with Daymark. It doesn't have to have anything to do with special needs. It doesn't have to have anything to do with anything. If you have a question, feel free to reach out. Yes, ma'am. Let me look. Oh. Codependent. Yeah. Codependent. Mm-hmm. Do y'all have questions for me? Do you have scenarios that are y'all just hungry and ready to go? Thank y'all for letting me come to talk to you. I hope you learned. Did anyone learn one thing? Okay. Are you going to lay in bed tonight and be like, ooh. Okay, good. Then I did my job. Yes, ma'am. We have, call Daymark and ask for Courtney. She might be here, actually. I don't know who's here with Daymark. If I go out there and she's there, you'll know. Her name's Courtney, and she's our outreach coordinator. And her main job is to find resources. So she knows everything about all the different places in all the different states, because she travels a lot and just meets different families and goes to different kinds of places. So she's a great resource, because if Daymark's not a good placement for someone, I always will give them her number, and she'll say, well, in your state, there's this, this, and this. Courtney, yes. Anyone else? Hey, keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. Yes, you're welcome.